welcome to 100 Huntley Street, friends. We are so excited to have you joining us, and I'm so excited to have a special guest today, Fernando Ortega.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Fernando, we're going to hear your story a bit in the show, but we're also going to hear more music from you. And yet right now, you're going to give us a little sampling of what's to come.
Right, this is a song I wrote for my friend Ben Patterson, who's a pastor in the U.S. who went through a really hard time many years back.
Blessed is the man who walks in your favor, who loves all your words and hides them like treasure in the darkest place of his desperate heart. They are a light, a strong, sure light.
So beautiful, Fernando.
Thank you.
That just hit my heart, and I'm sure it hit your heart. So stay with us, because it all starts right now.
Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today on
Yes.
100 Huntley Street. You can tell already today is going to be all about music.
And a very special program at that. I am so excited that Fernando Ortega is joining us. Later in the program, I'm going to be speaking with him about his new book, Fernando's Birds. So not only is he a prolific singer,
Yeah, you can
songwriter,
explain that to me,
composer,
Fernando's Birds. What's that?
pianist, he's a Dove Award-winning musician. He's created a book because he's an avid birder. So he's taken
Okay.
all the photos. He's got stories about the birds underneath, or poems. It's actually so beautiful. He has such an artist's heart. You think of the psalmists in the Bible,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
the way
yeah,
they
yeah.
wrote those songs. And it's so beautiful. I'm really excited. He'll be singing a song for us later in the program.
I think it's called Lord of Eternity. I mean, if it's
yes.
anything like what we heard at the top of the show,
Yeah.
it's just going to be a beautiful thing. You know, music is so amazing because it crosses generational lines, it crosses cultures, it crosses languages, and it has the ability to transport us, I always say, across space and time. You know, a song can take us back to a specific moment. You ever had that happen where a song comes on the radio or in your playlist and you're like, oh my goodness, I remember exactly where I was when I first heard this. Do you have that?
I do have that. I mean, I often hear, I'm going to giggle here, but growing up, I loved the 1950s, the oldies and goldies.
Okay, it's fine.
And my stepdad would take me out in his convertible and drive around and get me ice cream, and I would listen to that song in my teens.
Yeah.
Some of the oldies songs. So when I hear them come on, like I can remember sitting in the back of that convertible eating ice cream, listening, to so many greats. I'm just thinking of all of them, but so many.
I love that. For me, we were talking a little bit before we came on air today. There was a song that came out in 2009. Like, everybody knows that I'm a Striper fan, but this one isn't just about the music, it's about the lyrics. It was 2009. My dad had died in 2008, and I was really angry with God for, letting that happen. And a song came on called Four-Leaf Clover from this album called Murder by Pride. And the lyrics are very simple. And it's about how people have all these, crazy ideas about stuff. And it says, there's no strength in a unicorn. There's no luck in a four-leaf clover. There's no life unless it's born. And then he said, and there's no death when it's over. And the moment I heard that, it's like, your dad's not dead. He's alive in Christ. And when I heard that, Laura, I got to tell you, man, I was at a drive-thru at Tim Hortons, and I started to weep. It was so beautiful. And that's the power of music. And that's why we're featuring music all this week.
Yes, we certainly are. And we love that we're going to be featuring music that ministers to your heart. And God will use it to speak to your heart, just like God uses it to speak to our hearts. Well, stay with us. There is so much more Huntley to come.
Join us on 100 Huntley Street for a celebration of faith featuring musical performances by Don Moen, Brooke Nichols, Paul Balash, and more. Experience inspiring worship all week long. You don't want to miss it.
When I was young, I wanted someone to show me my value and worth and what I was capable of for my life. I wanted someone to mentor me. Over time, God brought other believers into my life who helped me grow and understand the value of discipleship. At Crossroads, we want to journey with you in your relationship with God. That is why in 2018, Crossroads started the Walk of Faith program to walk alongside each individual who reach out to us to grow in their faith and journey with Jesus. This is an ongoing ministry that takes the next steps after a call to our prayer lines. Through emails, chats, social media, and instant messaging, we connect each individual with our trained mentors who walk with you towards long-term change and hope. Every month, Crossroads Walk of Faith receives over 5,000 emails. Each email represents a person, a family, a life that needs hope, a new disciple who is worth your investment. You can be part of Mike's life. Mike reached out to Crossroads feeling hopeless and trapped by his past, seeing no way out. But after 9 months with a Walk of Faith mentor, he's learning to trust the Lord in difficult times, living by faith, and is frequently praying. Miriam reached out to Crossroads because her marital issues were too much for her to bear alone. After 5 months of being in a Walk of Faith program, Miriam and her mentor meet weekly, where Miriam receives prayer, encouragement, and mentoring. Miriam is thriving, attending church, and growing in her prayer life. Thanks to your support, Crossroads Walk of Faith online discipleship program can be a lifeline of belonging, personal change, and a connection of God's love.
Fernando Ortega is a celebrated singer-songwriter, pianist, and award-winning recording artist. He joins us today to talk about his inspiring journey and some new adventures. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, Fernando.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, we're so thankful you're here. And welcome back, actually, because you've been here before.
I have, yes. Thanks.
Well, Fernando, I wanted to chat with you a bit about your musical journey. And, you know, that began at such a young age. You grew up in New Mexico. You were one of 8 generations throughout your family line, the 8th generation. And there's so much rich legacy and heritage connected to your background there in New Mexico. And I've read places that you've written this has really influenced your music.
It has. I think, especially the landscape seems to constantly, the New Mexico landscape, which is high desert, mountainous, but then there's also a lot of like desert grassland. And those references have made it into a lot of songs over the years. And I moved to California when I was 26, and I tell my daughter now that I lived out there for 22 years, and even like during that first year out there, I was always in my heart like moving back to New Mexico, which is where I'm back there now, and it'll be home, till I die.
Well, it's, a really beautiful place, that region, and I haven't been there to visit yet, but I would like to.
Yeah.
Fernando, with 22 records, albums that you've done, and so many of them in the genre of Christian worship music, what was the pull you felt towards that genre?
It's, it's not a great story just because it's something I resisted. Well, no, maybe it is.
Maybe that is a good story.
Maybe that is a good story. I wanted to be a classical pianist.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was so hotly fixed on that, and I practiced like crazy. And I went to audition at some of the bigger music schools, Juilliard in Manhattan and Mannes and Curtis, when I was 21. And I just bombed all those auditions, And it was because my friend let me into the practice rooms at Juilliard. She was a violinist there, and I was practicing this Chopin ballade that was a very difficult piece. And all of a sudden, I heard somebody playing it down the hall, in the practice rooms, and playing it so much better than I could. And so I was really intimidated, but I went out and I looked in the window, and there was a 12-year-old girl playing it, and she was phenomenal. And that was sort of like a big negative hammer on my head, like realizing that really my gift was not that. And then the Lord and I was very depressed for a couple of years after that. But that's when the Lord started showing me that I had, a gift for singing and for writing songs and writing specifically Christian songs. And so it was a negative the way it got there, but it has ended up being exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Well, it's incredible because for so many of us who listen to your music, it's hard to believe that you struggled to succeed in those auditions. And so in a way, you know, I'm looking at it as divine providence, that God had other plans for you and to use your gifts to glorify him.
Yeah, that's how I see it now. I didn't see it that way
No.
back then. It was very difficult
Yeah.
couple of years, but man, yeah, it was a good one.
Your journey with God, you know, throughout your childhood, you went to a Presbyterian church and you heard hymns, but your journey with God, when would you say it became quite strong and personal for you in a way where it began to shape the course of your musical career and your life?
Yeah, I was born in the Presbyterian church, and my grandfather, who was born in 1889, converted to the Presbyterian church, he and his wife, in the 20s. So Presbyterianism was really central for my family and my ancestors, and but I left the church when I was 12, and then I came back to faith in a Pentecostal church that was really wild. I mean, the wildest Pentecostal stuff you see on TV was tame compared to our church, and that's where I learned. I just would sit at the piano. I learned how to improvise there. The bass player would just call out chord names, G, D, C, you know, and I'd be, you know, playing along, and so that music was like what really grabbed me, Pentecostal music. And then over the years, I kind of started longing to hear those hymns that I sang when I was a kid, but I didn't care about their meaning.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I was finding meaning in those old hymns, and so it's kind of those different elements that shaped what I do now.
It's so neat to hear, you know, that convergence in your life and just how God moves. Like, you know, it's so interesting. You know, when you're looking back on, wow, all the songs that you've either written or composed, or even the hymns you've reworked for the songs you've recorded, are there any, or is there one that particularly stands out for you when you reflect on your faith journey with God?
I don't know if there's just one, but the first one that comes to mind is a song called "Jesus, King of Angels," because there were a lot of years, I would say 15, where I struggled with anxiety and severe panic attacks, and I would be lying in bed 2 a.m. with my eyes wide open, just kind of imagining horrible things happening, things that would probably never happen in my life, and get so caught up in those, just anxiety and fear. I lived in fear, and so much of those days was me on my knees asking God to please get me through the next hour. And I kind of crawled through life that way, but it made me really deeply rely on God.
I relate in different ways, and it's interesting how God sometimes just heals us slowly over time.
Yeah.
It just takes time. It's, you keep praying, you keep asking, and I like that prayer, God, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sometimes he doesn't remove it right away, and some of these beautiful songs have been written out of that pain and to maybe minister to others going through similar circumstances.
Yeah.
Fernando, when you think about God as creator, and he's, the creator of the universe, and here you are as a creative, working on songs and creating music, does that really strike a deep chord in you?
As God as a creator?
Yeah.
Very much. Thinking about what it's like now to create a stanza of a song, and how pleasing it is when it comes. You're a writer, you know.
Yeah.
But how much, when we really get to understand where it comes from, or how our creativity is just like God pouring himself through us. That'll be an amazing moment to see when we...
Yeah, to fully understand in heaven, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Throughout the pandemic, so many of us were having to find new hobbies. We were doing different things. And of course, someone like you're used to touring and recording. But God birthed something else in your life during the pandemic, and it was this book, Fernando's Birds. And speaking of creativity and God's creation, these images which you took are completely stunning.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes. Look, it's... And you took them, many of them in the New Mexico region, but also globally as you were traveling. Yes.
The majority of them are from New Mexico and Arizona, but and also Florida. There are great birds in Florida. But if I'm in a place for any extended time, I always bring my camera gear with me and go traipsing through the woods looking for birds and stuff. Yeah. I remember meeting Oh, years ago, maybe 25 years ago, I met John Stott, the great.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and we were doing. I was providing music for one of his fundraising events, so he was backstage, and he was just talking about birds, you know, and I remember looking at my manager and going, "Nerd alert," and then and then now here I am, and I would give anything to go back and show him my photos and tell him the birds I've seen and.
That's like a little seed God was sowing in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was such a great,
Oh, an incredible theologian.
Incredible theologian, but he he loved birds.
What I loved as well, Fernando, in this book are a lot of the stories about each bird. Like, I just love it. There's so much character. And every time I was starting a paragraph, I just get drawn in, like, about this bird and what their life is like and what's happening. It's really neat storytelling. It's unique.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I come from my whole family, they're great storytellers. I think my brother's the best among us, but my grandfather that I mentioned, he was really a master storyteller. And he never spoke English, so, all these stories in Spanish about just our family and ancestors in New Mexico and ghost stories and stuff. It was just very good stuff to hear when we were kids.
Yeah. Fernando, we just love you here in Canada, and we're always trying to get you back. And I know sometimes your daughter Ruby goes out on the road with you. Mm-hmm. She's 14, right?
14, yeah, almost 15.
So that's a whole phase of life right now for you, raising a teenage daughter, and you have a very special connection to her, though.
We're very close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and partially because she's my daughter, but she's great. She's just hilarious and beautiful and kind and sweet, and but she's a musician, and so she plays. My brother and I bought her a pink Stratocaster.
Oh wow!
So she carts that thing around and plays, all kinds of rock music. She hauled me to a Smashing Pumpkins concert the other night, and we had a blast. But and what I love is that she's very. She grew up listening to a lot of Beatles, Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, and so she knows those records really well.
Yeah.
She can hear a song and she'll go, "Oh, that's from Revolver, second cut, first side, or whatever." But then a lot of modern bands, so I get to keep abreast of younger bands that are current, And,
that is so neat.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Nothing like being a parent of a teenager. I'm a parent of one right now, so it's a super exciting time. But it's always making me think future focus. Like I think a lot about legacy. We talked off the top of this interview about legacy and heritage and what we receive.
Yeah.
When you think about, you've had such an interesting life's journey in music and in art and writing. When you think about legacy and you think about, well, this is what I hope those who are following along with me in my life will take from what they see in my life. Mm-hmm. What do you think about? What do you hope people see when they look at you?
Well, I maybe just, clinging to God in adversity, I guess. And I feel like that's the main thrust of most of my songs. It's a theme that I'm always revisiting my songs. Alistair Begg, the speaker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was telling me, you need to write some happier songs, lad, because they are just about, a lot of them about struggle, but also I guess this story about my anxiety that it's a thing in my past now. I love that, and I hope that going forward with this new record that I'm coming out with, that it'll talk about that people will see that the hope in the new songs and everything.
Well, and that's what I'm excited about, your new record coming out. Yeah. Now, do you have your title yet? I know you've got songs.
No, I don't have a title.
I'm just like, when we get the first...
So it's a weird record how it's coming together. Normally I have a theme that I work on. And so there was the song that was the impetus behind the record is a song I wrote for my daughter when she was younger, maybe 4 or 5 or 6. It's called Every Time You Leave. And so... But then, as I started putting together other songs, it really that wasn't the central theme. It wasn't Ruby, but so right now the record's almost completed, and I would say that even though that was the original theme, Ruby, my daughter, it's morphed into more of a record about God's faithfulness, and then there are some songs, just life songs about, like I said about Ruby. There's one about finding God in small things, like we were talking about bird songs and everything. Yes, but I don't have a title yet. It's a work in progress. It's almost done, though. I better find a title pretty quickly and some artwork.
Well, I cannot wait to listen to that album. And I'm so excited about some of the songs you're going to be sharing with us today.
Yeah, me too.
Later in the program.
Yeah.
Fernando, your life has been full of so much artistry and authenticity and humility. It's so many different pieces. But I'm just so thankful that you are with us today to share your story and to share about Fernando's Birds, your upcoming album. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Blessed is the man who walks in your favor, who loves all your words and hides them like treasure in the darkest place of his desperate heart. They are a light, a strong, sure light. Sometimes I call out your name, but I cannot find you. I look for your face, but you are not there. By my sorrows, Lord, lift me to you, lift me up to your side. Lord of eternity, Father of mercy, look on my fainting soul. Keeper of all the stars, friend of the poorest heart, touch me and make me whole. You are my defender. Who is against me? No one can trouble or harm me. If you are my strength, all I ask, all I desire is to live in your eternity, Father of mercy, look on my fainting soul. Keeper of all the stars, friend of the poorest heart, touch me and make me whole. Lord of eternity, of all mercy, come to my troubled soul. Keeper of all the stars, friend of the poorest heart, touch me and make me whole.
Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I will say, rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you.
Do you ever feel hesitant when it comes to sharing your faith? This month, Crossroads wants to help you talk about your beliefs with confidence and joy. We're pleased to offer the book, Each One, Reach One, Everyday Ways You Can Shine God's Light by award-winning artist Babby Mason.
Don't worry about how it comes out. There's something about kindness that tears down walls. It makes a person's heart vulnerable, and they are looking for a lifeline.
This inspiring, interactive book is perfect for those longing to share their God story with others. Find your unique style of talking about Jesus and share your faith with excitement.
And when they're looking for a lifeline, I give them a lifeline. When they express their need, I share my faith.
Request this ministry offer with a donation of $40 or more, or when you become a new monthly partner. Call 1-800-265-3100 or visit crossroads.ca/shine.
Oh, wow. You know,
I feel like I've just been to church.
I know. Fernando's music is so reflective, and I just find my heart opening up. Like, as I'm listening, blessed is the man who walks, who has your favor. Like, these lyrics, they remind me of the psalmist in the Bible. And maybe you need to be reminded today that you can confess your heart to God, that God is walking with you on your journey, no matter what you're facing. That's what these songs lead me to do, Joe, is just to be honest with God. God, this is where I'm at today. This is how I'm challenged. God, I'm so thankful for your goodness and your faithfulness. And sometimes we need to be reminded that we can do that. We can do as the psalmist does, as people like Fernando lead us to do, tell the truth. Journey with God.
The title of the song, Lord of Eternity. And sometimes when we're going through something, we're so encompassed by what we're going through, and it seems to take over everything.
Yeah.
But he's not just the Lord of the moment, right? He's the Lord of eternity. The storm will pass, the season will pass. Yeah. But in that season, if you find yourself struggling, please feel free to call the prayer line, 1-866-273-4444, and somebody will be there to pray with you and walk with you through that season.
Those calls are all anonymous, and we're there to love you and not judge you, and to share Bible verses with you and believe with you that God is with you on your journey, and He will lead you into good places.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, good word.
Thank you for your ongoing support of Crossroads, a supporter-funded nonprofit organization and member of the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities. Thanks to faithful people like you, we are able to continue producing 100 Huntley Street. You can write to Crossroads, P.O. Box 5100, Burlington, Ontario, L7R4M2, or visit crossroads.ca to learn more about our programs.